Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Dallisa Hocking, fifth generation psychic medium, and we have quite a show for you today. I have Michael Erlewine here with me, and I'm going to give you a little bit about who he is and what a legend he has been, especially in the astrology industry, and continues to make his mark with heliocentric astrology. And we're going to have a really interesting conversation about what happens when we pass away. So, Michael, I'm going to share your bio if that's okay with you.
Sure.
All right, let's do this. Michael Erlewine is a pioneering astrologer, author, and multimedia innovator who has shaped modern astrology for more than 5 decades. He's the founder of Matrix Software, the first astrology software company in the world, and has written dozens of books exploring astrology, dharma traditions, and the inner life. Michael's deep studies in Eastern philosophy, meditation, and Tibetan Buddhism inform his grounded, experiential approach to astrology. He has consulted with thousands of clients, taught internationally, and mentored many of the well-known astrologers we know today, and they credit him as a major influence on their path. Beyond astrology, Michael's also an accomplished musician, photographer, and archivist of American music culture. His lifetime of research and creativity has made him one of the most respected voices in esoteric studies today. You can learn more about Michael and actually get his free ebooks over on his website, spiritgrooves.net. And for a limited time, Michael Erlewine is offering sessions to really understand your own heliocentric chart, which is probably very, very different than what most people know in their birth chart and the perspective of that read. And so heliocentric is very, very interesting. And you can connect with him through Facebook and through Facebook Messenger. And you can look up his name, Michael Erlewine. Last name is Erlewine. So, Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you've done a lot in your life. Extensive bio that I just went through. And I know many people who've been studying astrology for some time probably have heard of you, know of you. So how did you, let's start here. Where did you first get introduced to astrology? How did this enter your life over 5 decades ago?
I think I first got into astrology in the late 1950s. I was a high school dropout, and I just wanted to get out in the world. I didn't want any more schooling. I just hated it. But when I tried to find out who I was, I was kind of the only thing that I found was modern psychology was kind of uh, describing us with, like schizophrenic or paranoid or stuff like that. And so I didn't like that there wasn't some what happened to be honorable in all the good ways that we used to describe us. So when I came across astrology, I got a picture of myself that wasn't like some kind of dementia or all these things that I couldn't relate to because I was just a kid, basically a young adult. And so when I saw astrology, then I found the way of describing myself that I could appreciate.
Yeah. Tell people a little bit about what heliocentric astrology is, because that might be a new term for some of our viewers today.
Cool. I think the easiest way to understand it is that about 500 years ago, Copernicus, who was an astronomer, astrologer, and everyone was both an astronomer, pointed out to everyone, to the world, that everything doesn't revolve around us. And at that time, that caused a huge schism. A whole bunch of the astronomers said, wow, that's, we always thought everything revolved around the Earth. And he said, no. So they took the heliocentric chart, which is the chart from the sun, because the Earth, the traditional astrology chart is a snapshot of the solar system from Earth. And that's what astrologers have used all these years. But these guys said, okay, that's great. We have that one, but now we also have kind of a picture of the system. And they went on to become astronomers And then modern day, and even today, they're the oldest academic discipline, botany and astronomy. But astrologers, a whole other bunch of them said, no, 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 we don't accept that. That's not true. And they only use the chart that we know today, and they're still doing it now. So, what I'm suggesting is not that I'm just a heliocentric astrologer, but that I have two charts that you can triangulate so that you get a more like a three-dimensional sense of who you are. And further or farther, no, further, but what I found out was that the chart that I grew up on, the geocentric regular chart that we all know, is a chart not of me so much as of my the circumstances, which I call it the karma chart. It's what I'm going to have to work through in this life, and that the heliocentric chart is more a chart of what we call our dharma, our tribe, our archetype, who we are. Who is it that's going to go through all this stuff? And the standard geocentric chart. And when I discovered that over a process of time, because I had to program, I was the first person to program astrology and give it to astrologers. I found out that I first had to program, and I hated math. I never got out of, they made me take algebra 1 3 times, but I got good marks and all A's in geometry. But what I found out is I had to first calculate the helio, and that the traditional chart, the geocentric that we use, is simply a coordinate transformation from the heliocentric. So when I had to do that, then I began to look at that chart and I said, wow, this is a kind of a different kind of chart. And then as I got into it, I said, gee, this is what I kind of always look for in my, for all these years I'd been an astrologer, and made my living doing that. But this is different. This is like who I always wondered who I was. This is it. And then over that time, I kind of transmigrated so that a few months later, I began to identified with the helio chart as who I was, and the geo chart is what I'm going through. Right? Two
Wow.
different charts. I could look at. It's not like people like to think of me as a helio because they don't do helio, but I'm not just that. I'm just saying there's more than one chart, and it's the same us, the same birth time, the same moment, etc. So does that explain a little bit?
It does. So, do you feel from all these decades of your work and looking at so many charts and teaching so many astrology classes, do you think that maybe the more comprehensive approach to looking at someone's incarnation or what they came into this lifetime with by looking at both the Earth perspective chart and the Sun perspective chart, looking at both of them and seeing where they triangulate?
Yeah, because I think that astrologers tend to believe that they're very spiritual, that we have a spiritual component to our life, but that the sun is probably like just a big hot ball of gas. Spirituality is universal. I mean, it's everywhere. And if we're spiritual, and yet the sun from which we come and it supports us and keeps us alive, it's not spiritual. That's just nuts. So we need to look into the heliocentric chart and not think of it as, I mean, many astrologers have said to me, well, we don't live on the sun. No, we don't, but we live from the sun because of the sun. And spirit doesn't have boundaries. It's not just earth. Anyway, that's how I got into it. And there are other charts too that we can look at, but we don't need to get into them here. It's neat to have more than if you only have. It was a great jazz tune called "Compared to What." If you don't have anything to compare it to, that one chart, what is that? We really need to triangulate. We need to have different views and then take the best of that. So is that, am I being clear?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think a lot of people listening to this, their minds are probably a bit blown right now because we get so used to the one chart and maybe we've got that is the one chart to look at and work with. And now to hear that we have the heliocentric and other types of astrology charts, it really backs up what I've heard over the years is, we maybe can never learn everything there is to know about astrology in one lifetime. And it takes so much practice and study to get, I mean, as far as you've gotten in your career. But I think it just shows us how vast astrology can be.
Well, here's another thought that, and I think I mentioned it, but maybe I didn't drive the point. The point is that astronomers who use two charts have a good living. Astrologers, after all this time with just one chart, are still struggling to make a living. My company called Matrix Software, which is the second oldest company software on the internet. The only older one is Microsoft, and it's still going. The point is that astrologers, and we had like maybe 42,000 customers over the year. They are almost entirely, not all of them, but most of them struggle to make a living. Now, why is that? And why do the same people that were astrologers and astronomers have a good living? Astronomers are respected. When I tried to buy my first calculator, and I went to the bank, and they said, well, I needed a loan. And they said, well, what are you? And I was really proud. I said, I'm an astrologer. And they said, well, gee, picked up a chart, and he said, that's just above migrant workers. We're not going to give you a loan. They didn't give it. And I went back 3 times. I finally got the loan, and that started my software company. But think about that.
Wow.
Why are we still struggling? Is there any reason? We're no different than astronomers. We didn't used to be. So why are we suddenly? And it's not that I think that I did readings for 9 years straight, and I still do them over the years, but I haven't been charging for them except lately, just because I'm trying to buy a new piece of equipment. That idea, but think about that. So I think that learning about the heliocentric chart changed my life. Literally, is that pretty soon that's where I identified. So, well, yeah, that's the mother chart, and the geo is an angle on a view of it, and they both are very important, but they're not exclusive.
I've never heard of someone going to a bank to get a calculator loan. So
A long time
yeah,
ago.
you bring up a great point. I think that there's still a lot of people that are not really aware of the depth and wisdom that comes with astrology, that maybe point to it and say, oh, it's fluff, or it's voodoo, or it's against the Bible, or there's all different kinds of stories. I mean, I've been personally attacked as a psychic medium for the last decade, so
Yep.
uh, I get it, and I don't think it's fair. But I also don't think that we should stop doing what we're doing and
No,
sharing
but
what
we
we
might
know.
want to up our
Yeah.
game a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Fascinating. Okay. So I wanted to start talking about, as I read in your bio, that you've studied Eastern philosophy, meditation, and Tibetan Buddhism. So, how did you get onto that path of those different studies? How did it find you?
Well, it's kind of weird. I used to be a musician, and I played music. I had a blues band. Iggy Pop was my drummer. Um, when I was doing that, but I'm from 5 boys, um, and we had no sisters. And how to say this? My father was we loved our father, but he didn't really talk to his boys about anything deep. So I struggled to find someone that was older, like a parent figure. And I ended up studying black music for a long time. And I went to Chicago, and I helped to put on major conferences and music festivals in Michigan, and Ann Arbor Blues Festivals in 1969 and 70, 72, and 73. I was in charge of taking care of all those people, bringing them food and drink. Um, visiting them. And some of them came like a week early, and we could go up to the room. We went up and spent the whole half of the night with like Big Mama Thornton, people like that, just learning about them. But what I did get from that, aside from the music, which was just tremendous, and I've written a number of books about blues, uh, was that this was like the parent figure that I never had. Here's someone that kind, compassionate, that had been through a lot, way more than I could ever imagine going through. So that persisted until I came across a Tibetan teacher called Chogyam Trungpa in 1974 who came to Ann Arbor. And he wasn't very well known, so I ended up being his chauffeur and creating a poster for his event and stuff like that. But here was another group of people who were extremely sensitive, wise, but also that I could relate to. So that's how I got into that, in the sense that these were, in all the years when I grew up, I could never learn from a teacher that I didn't respect them personally. I mean, if they seemed to me to be full of BS or whatever, anything, I just didn't want to get infected by it. I didn't want to be part of it. And I didn't. So I paid no attention to school. And I just went out. But I just always wanted just to be in life. So anyway, that's how I got into kind of into, that's how I got into astrology finally. Maybe I didn't, did I explain how? I don't know if I did explain it. What did I say?
Yeah, you could talk to us a little bit more about how these different traditions and understandings and teachings found you. But it sounds like, from what I've gathered, that you were seeking to find more of yourself, and that you weren't necessarily finding what you understood or maybe was relatable in traditional psychology. And so you started to get more interested in what
Exactly.
astrology could point to help you discover and uncover who you are.
And I can't remember, did I show you when we talked once before my library? I can't remember.
Yes,
I have
yes.
a huge library, tens of thousands of books just on astrology. And I donated them all to the University of Illinois some years ago. But my point is, I really searched, I really looked, and then I went and learned Chinese astrology, and I learned Tibetan astrology. Wrote an 800-page book just on Tibetan. So you were asking me, I think you were interested in some of the stuff that we talked about in Tibetan astrology about when we pass on, when we die, and how we can.
Yes.
But what is your question there?
Yeah, let me back up one step before we start talking about what happens when we pass away. Uh, the word dharma. And
Right.
so I think, in at least America these days, you hear karma talked about a lot. And, you did this, so, karma is going to pay you back. And so karma is just a word that a lot of people maybe use very loosely today. But what is dharma? Can you explain that to us?
Well, Dharma is first of all, it, today it's many things, but what it's supposed to be, the Dharma is the truth, the way it is, the way it actually is when the rubber meets the road and you get down to it. Uh, what is reality? That's what Dharma is about. How to, like in modern times, like we're in, it's been more about how do we stop thinking? How do we stop just thinking that what we understand conceptually is the same thing as actually experiencing? Because it's not. So it's been a process, I think, in this country. Buddhism takes about 300 years to come in the country. We're at the point, if we're trying to take all this intellectual stuff about what is dharma, what is karma, and to ground it, to actually experience for ourselves what is the truth. And I think that's what meditation and stuff like that is about. It's not something just to sit in a corner and look at a candle or something like that. It's really vigorous. It takes some very strong desire and searching on our part to be able to to take thoughts that are just words and to experience them what the reality of them is. And so the dharma is really that process of getting real, and realize. Remember that the word Buddha simply means aware. So it's all about becoming more aware of what is already there that we've never become aware of. I don't know if that's helpful.
It is. Yeah, I appreciate that. So let's shift a bit into what happens when we pass away. And for just some backstory, you and I have chatted before, and you were sharing a lot about your life and your experiences and what happens when we cross over. And I said, wait, Michael, we got to do this on a recording and talk to people about this. And so that's how we came together today, is really to start digging into this, because one of the things I got from our first conversation was uh, that there is a lot about this lifetime. There's a lot that is incorporated here and has connections to the other side, if that's how we want to refer to it as. And it's important for us to understand that while we're alive, while we're here, and that astrology can be one of those tools that helps us to go deeper. But I know that you've written a lot of books about a lot of different spiritual, esoteric topics. So let's dive in. So, yeah, what do you think happens, or what have you learned happened after we leave our physical bodies here on Earth?
I don't think much about it. I have studied it, and I've studied it I've run a Dharma center here in Michigan since the 1980s. And because of all the great Rinpoches that had to flee Tibet because of the invasion, uh, a lot of them came to this center because they had nowhere to go. So, I mean, they would come because we're a regular center as part of a monastery in New York. So I got a chance to spend time with these people and to get deep into it. So I think the way to look at it is that in this country, the way I was brought up, the whole concept of what we call ourself, ourself. Um, the Buddhists see it differently. They don't, and it's one of the things I found out also in astrology. They all are astrologers. They all have little calendars, every one of them. But they're not. I found that they were not very interested in the self, and they were not very. If I did astrology with some of that, it's particularly true in India. Uh, they don't credit the self the way the self is really important in America, right? But what they had to say about it, I didn't understand, because what they said is that the self is something that's basically that we create ourselves out of all the things that we're attached to. It's kind of like all of our attachments. Oh, I like this, I don't like that. Uh, our attachments are kind of the glue, or like the glue that creates and holds the self together. But that self, you don't want to mistake our idea of ourself. It's like mistaking. We can fall into thinking of the self as like the ventriloquist, and we're the dummy, when really it's the dummy and we're the ventriloquist, that we are creating something that then we are listening to and talking with, and talking to yourself. I mean, you all do that. What is that? Well, Tibetans have a different way. First of all, they point out that the self is not going to, when we die and if we're reincarnated or reborn or something, that self is not going to reappear. So that if I pass on, Michael Erlewine is not going to appear down the road in another birth, maybe a different name, but still essentially Michael Erlewine. So there are two great philosophies, one from India and then the one that is more from Tibet. in India, they believe in what's called reincarnation. They believe that the soul persists, endures. It's the same soul that's reincarnated in the next life, maybe a different parents and different stuff like that, but that self is eternal. This is a big thing in this country. But the Buddhists say, no, no, no. They don't see it that they say that self, and this is what when this is now getting toward passing, going into the Bardo regions, they're saying that self is going to remain. When we die, that self is going to just die with us. It's going to remain, and it lasts for a little while, and psychics can deal with it and talk with it and stuff. But really, the entity that was, in this case, it would be me, and I'm not that many years away from it. That is moving on, and it's moving on not as an entity, not like a coherent Michael Erlewine. It's moving on more like an array, all the little parts of Michael Erlewine's karma, all the things that he was attached to and maybe blew up. And the problem with ourself is that we tend to gild the lily. We tend to puff ourselves up. All of that puffiness, when we die, according to the Buddhists, just dies with us. But the consciousness that we are when we actually physically die, all of our karma, all of our attachments disappear, and we're very, very much more just like I don't know about how to put it. We no longer have any self to admire or to puff up or to hide in or to get carried away with. We're just an entity. We're just a consciousness that, according to the Buddhists anyway, is very a huge shock for us. And that the closest we come to it now is if somebody dies that we love very dearly, something happens to us, and the self is the first thing to shatter. And we kind of lose ourselves, and maybe we go out and walk the streets, or we can't get our stuff together for a week or two. You need to look at that, because that's what's going to happen when we die, in the sense that the self as we know it, and really self is a big deal for us. That's going to be shattered and just be in pieces. And you can test it out anytime that you go through a shock, especially one that's really deep. I mean, like you lose a parent or something like that. Watch don't just grieve, which of course I'd have, and we do, but look at what you're seeing then. This is an opportunity for you to get a picture of what's going to happen when we eventually die and we start to pass on and enter the bardos after death. And it's also our life is also a bardo. There's like 6 different ones. So first of all, am I making any sense? Is this too far out?
No, it's great. I love this conversation. I think we need to talk about what the bardos are. So if you could go through what that is here on Earth and what those are when we pass away, I think that would give people more
Okay.
context.
As far as they are, what they are on Earth, this is it. We're living it. That's a bardo. However, as I said, when we divest, when we have to drop the self, and the self is not just going to be shattered, it's simply shattered, it's going to be gone. That entity, whatever that consciousness goes into, typically it's something like 49-day period when a 49-day period during which we're going to be I don't want to just say tested. We're going to have to endure a lot of stuff that we. But here's another way of saying that: when we do die, we're suddenly going to be very free of all the heaviness of this body, and all of the attachments we have, all the things we've done wrong, all the things we don't like. Suddenly, we're going to be very, very more like a leaf in the wind. We're going to be blown about And there's different bardos that we go through. Um, and we're also going to be, the closest I ever got to it, I think I might have told you about it, is that I had a major stroke. And in that moment, and for days and weeks afterward, I could not get into myself at all. I was like, to me, it seemed like this is like right in the middle of the hospital, being wheeled around in a wheelchair and all that kind of stuff. It was like that I was out on a desert plain with this incredibly hot sun, light shining above that I couldn't even look like. It's like we were not allowed to look at the sun. It was like that, except it wasn't the sun. It was, uh, I'm so used to being entertained by myself. Find something that's interesting. Lose yourself in a movie, lose yourself. I spent a whole lifetime of kind of, it's what the Buddhists call samsara. It's a place that we build around ourselves and then we hide in. But for those days and weeks that went on for a month or two, and got better, it took all that time for myself to reanimate. It's not like a little shock. Parents is a big thing, but a stroke is a really big thing. But the mind was just as clear as a bell as it always is. It's not like I was in any way confused. It was, I could not find a way. I could not get away from the light. When I presented this to my teacher that I worked, the dharma Tibetan teacher I worked with for 36 years, who didn't even speak any English, he laughed and said, "That's really good." He says, "Because this is good training for you, Michael, because that's exactly what's going to happen to you when you die, is that you're going to have trouble. You're not going to be able to reanimate a self. You're not going to have any way of hiding. Talk about dharma, or the reality. You're going to have to tough it out." I mean, he didn't say these words. I'm extrapolating. Okay, well, that taught me a lot because it was something, but what it taught me is that if I think that from all of my many years, about 50 some years of Dharma practice, that a stroke could do me like that, what in the heck is going to happen when I die? Mm. And I don't have any way to get back, because that whole self, the same thing that if you're doing psychic stuff that you can talk with departed selves, the self that I used to say to my teacher, I said, well, what are these people, what are these psychics and these seances? And I went to a lot of them because early on in astrology, we all were at the same conferences. What about that? And he says, oh, well, that's just talking with selves that are still somewhat animate, that have been left behind. The person that died is long gone. They're going to be really busy doing what I tried to describe a little bit. So I came away from that. That experience sobered me up big time. And I was not prepared for it, was totally unprepared for it. But ever since then, I've studied it and I've tried to begin to strengthen myself so that and one of the ways to strengthen yourself is simply to, when you feel bored, that's a doorway. That's not something to get away from. That's something to go through. You need to start getting used to not being entertained and not being busy all the time. Just being busy because it prevents you from having to look at the reality of the life that you're living. So what are you getting from that?
Yeah, I have a question about the bardos. You mentioned that there are six. So as you were talking about them, the words that came to mind for me, just based on my own psychic mediumship language, is life review. So these six bardos, is it part of the review of the incarnation that you had, or like, can you explain a little bit more about what those six
I think,
stages
yeah,
are?
I think that it might get a little tiny bit technical.
Okay.
What happens is that the only things that remain when we die are all of the attachments that we had, the karma that we created. that has not ripened, that still has to ripen. So it's not, so I used to think of what I would like to do is die and then have the whole lot of me organize it as I am and then reincarnate. Well, the Buddhists don't believe in that, as I pointed out before. What they say instead, it's like if you took all of the karma that you created and put it in one of those boxes, like a box of chocolates or something, each had a separate little place to be, so that our karma moves forward in what's called the storehouse consciousness. In Sanskrit, it's called the Alaya Vijnana. And what it is like uh, a slow moving barge in a river is pushed forward like you would if you're swimming trying to reach a inner tube and the waves are pushing it beyond you. You can't reach it. It pushes forward, but it's not the entity Michael. It's all of the parts of Michael as if you could take them apart and put them in a box. Those parts go forward into the bardos, and depending on how enlightened you are, or how, what I was saying is that my ability to deal with the bright light that is from the stroke not very good. I had no control of it. All I wanted to do was run and hide. I just wanted to put myself out like a cigarette or something. I didn't want to have to look at that. If you can learn to deal with boredom and all of that in our life that's right with us, but that we're not aware of, then you can, ideally, you could not even have to be born again, have rebirth. You'd be in some state that I don't know anything about, that, become realized or enlightened. But what they say does happen, if you can't do that, and so far I don't think I could do that, then you will be seeking out a womb. You'll find some parents that are able to conceive, and you'll enter that womb. This is just what they say. This is not anything I know about. This is only what I've read, and that I've spent many, many years trying to figure it out. And then they will conceive and create a new body, a son or a daughter. And that daughter will not be you or me, but it will pick up on all of the karma that's ripening that was pushed forward in the storehouse consciousness and incorporate that, embody that. And that person with a different name and a different person will create another whole self. Now, I don't know whether that's helpful, but that's what I've been able to understand happens. And that, no, first of all, I can't remember my past lives. And I've talked to many people who say they can. Also, Rinpoches, the really serious people, I think it's very difficult to do, apparently. But still, you do psychic stuff, so you may know more about that than I do. But what I'm saying is, working with the Tibetans, they some of them can say that they know of past lives, but I've never met any, and I've met hundreds of them.
Yeah.
So,
I've looked at several of my own past lives, and I've worked with many, many clients at this point looking at their past lives. And one of the experiences that stand out to me is how a theme, and I'd love your take on this, a theme of self-worth. There was one of the first lifetimes I saw where I was worthless, literally working to the bone, and was property. And when I saw that, it started unlocking, and I could feel myself, in the field working in that lifetime. And as I came out of that experience of viewing it, it made so much sense to so many parts of my stories in this incarnation that logically I could start to kind of snap that into place and work with it more. And I think looking at the past lives, I think has helped me become a better version of myself in understanding some of the key themes and lessons and how to heal not only in this lifetime, but things that I've experienced in other lifetimes as well. So I've been lucky to experience that. That is there anything in what you've studied or learned over the years that could connect or correlate, like something in a past life, like maybe it's a issue on self-worth, that then shows up in this lifetime for us to work on?
Okay, I don't have the experience that you have, right? I don't know that. Uh, and but I have all the self-worth stuff. I've got all that, right? Uh, and trying to just the way the training that I went through, have been going through for many, many years, decades and decades with the Tibetans, is very disciplined. And while I didn't want to go to school, I did want to go and do what they wanted me to do. But I didn't want to just do it lightly. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to miss something that I should out of laziness or something like that. So I was very, very careful to do what they said. And there's this one thing that you do that's it's called the extraordinary preliminaries. Its common name is the Nundro. And it's things where you do like over $100,000 full prostrations on the ground, right? And another 100,000 mandalas where you put grains on a plate, another 1,000 syllable mantras, and 100, it goes on. There's 5 different things that you do. And then when I got done with that and went to my teacher, so, well, I've done that. I'm ready to go on to some of these more advanced teachings. He says, well, Michael, do you want to know what I would do if I were you? And I said, well, of course, Rinpoche, you're Rinpoche. He says, I would do it all over again. And I did. So what I'm trying to say is that I put in the effort and I did what I was told to do. And that was just one of the things. In my lifetime, what I just told you about the stroke and the results of that, I had experienced that a little bit from shocks and things that happened to you. I can't explain to you how earth-shaking that was, in the sense of my realizing that I've been very active as a person. I've done a lot of stuff and I've been a lot of places. But my interests, a lot of times I thought that the interest in things that I have, like photography and even Buddhism, all of that extreme busyness can also be seen as a form of ignorance, of ignoring anything else, wrapping myself up in the busyness of life. What I learned from the stroke and stuff is that is not going to help me one whit when I lose it. If you lose it, you lose all of it. I mean, I'm talking about ourself again. And then I found that, and I explained to you that the Tibetans weren't concerned about the self. I mean, another way you can find it out real quickly if you're an astrologer, just do a reading for a Hindu. They don't want to know anything about the self. They want to know how many angels can dance on the head of a pin, exactly how many children they have, males and females and stuff like that. We American astrologers don't do that. Maybe we think we can, maybe you can. I've known a lot of astrologers and I haven't found, maybe the Vedic ones. Also, I've programmed all the Vedic astrology too. And I've written reports on it and stuff like that. All I'm saying is that I feel I can't speak for everyone. I'm unprepared for all of my spiritual training to pass into the Bardo. I'm not terrified of it. I'm becoming less terrified of it. I'm only terrified of it because my experience was so profound with the stroke. And my teacher was right on it. I mean, he didn't blink. He said, yeah, that's good training. That's exactly how it's going to be. A disembodied consciousness, which will no longer have ourself. Trust me, you can't imagine what it's like not to have a self. But
Yeah.
the Tibetans and the Hindus that I've talked to and done readings with and stuff, they're not at all interested in that because they know what the self is, a construct, something we create and then talk with.
Yeah. I have a question then, because I just feel that there are going to be some people listening to this that hear you say that, and maybe they have a sense of panic,
Yeah, they
or
should.
discomfort, yeah,
Yeah.
coming up inside of them. And they're thinking, well, where are the loved ones that I've had that have passed away? And uh, I want to be who I am when I pass away. And
Well,
I want to be
yeah.
able to connect with my loved ones as I am now and who they are on the other side. So, what would you say to that person listening to this, having a bit of a panic go through them?
Well, first of all, I'd say I understand your panic totally because I've absolutely had it in a way served up to me that I would never, ever have asked for. And that it took me weeks and weeks just to pull myself back together again so that I could hide in it. That there's some parts of life that are no joke. Uh, as to how I do not have, I know nothing about um, what you're talking about in the sense of course, uh, I know grief from when my parents died or anything that like that, but I, yeah, I don't think it's like that. That's what I'm trying to say. Is that I think we can love and have compassion and kindness, uh, and of course, I was attached to my mom and my dad and uh, many other. All of my at my age, I'm 84. All of my friends are almost gone. Almost every week, I lose one. I can't pick up the phone ever again and reach them, and it just goes on and on. I think I have one really old friend left. Period. That's it. So what you're saying, how can we be in touch with the loved ones that have already passed over? The only thing I know would be prayer, that we would, and what is prayer? Prayer for me is bringing them to mind, maybe also bringing in everything of goodness and stuff, or maybe my really kind teachers to mind, and kind of merging that and sending them all of the kindness that I could, and try to take on any of their pain. But am I having a conversation with my mom? No. Have I been to seances and all that? Yes. I've been to many, many of them because back then in the 50s, and it'd be more like in the 70s, um, that's what we did. We did message services and seances. So I've been to a lot of them. And I've been given different names and had people call out stuff. Uh, I'm just saying, all of that aside, I think that we are more on our own than we imagine. We can be
Mhm.
surrounded by loved ones. And if there's one thing I've learned from the Dharma is that turning the wheel of the Dharma is something that ultimately we each have to do ourselves. The Buddha couldn't just touch our forehead and we'd be enlightened. If we're going to get enlightened, it's going to be being alone enough. And you, another way to say it would be that the wheel of Dharma we each have to turn. It's going to sit there for as many lifetimes or as much of this lifetime till we want to actually get down and turn it. If we don't, it's a do it yourself thing. It's not something, no one is ever going to do anything spiritual for you because that's the whole idea is you have to do it. You have to become enlightened. No one can, you can read a million books and I, I've looked at not a million, but a lot of books. So I don't mean to, I certainly don't mean to be dispiriting or to make people feel uncomfortable, but I think that personally, I've been made to feel very uncomfortable, and I'm trying to do something about it. I'm trying to go into uh, those parts of life that I ignore, that I find boring, or that I don't want to. I don't want to be just alone. I want to be busy. I want to be doing something. You need to look at that, or at least I need to look at that busyness. And so um, I apologize if this is too raw for anyone out there. And I've written a lot of stuff about this. So you can just spiritgrooves.com, .net has lots of books on dharma. Uh, but that's how I see it.
Yeah. Uh, it's interesting for mediumship because, I've done, gosh, who knows how many sessions at this point. And going back to something you said a bit ago about our consciousness, our energy being busy on the other side,
Yeah.
I can attest to that during many, many mediumship experiences. I connect into the person that had the incarnation here on earth. And many times they'll say, hey, let them know we're busy over here. Or spirit will come through and channel a message and say, uh, you know, we have a lot we're doing on the other side. And so we're maybe not as like readily available to come in, 24/7, because I get a lot of questions from people that are in a state of grief, and they want to know, like, how do I have my loved one come in more often and be around me, you know, more than what they're currently around me. And I've had numerous times spirit say, see, see.
Yeah.
So I do think you're right on about, I don't think that they're sitting on the other side, just kind of twiddling their thumbs patiently, waiting for us to get over there. I think there's other things that they're working on.
I
Uh,
think you're right. Uh, the Rinpoche I worked with was 96 when he passed on. I can't even begin to describe what it was like. And I said this before, but he's very clear because in many of the, I did, for instance, 31 years of 10-day intensives on Mahamudra, driving 1,600 miles for each one of them, enough to go around the world 2.5 times, taking all my kids because we never wanted to babysit. We wanted always to have them there. What he said to me is that when in some of these intensives, people get up and talk about mediumship and talk about all of that. And I just repeat what I told him before. He says is that they're talking to something that is ephemeral and that is gradually decaying. They have their own way of looking at this. I'm only sharing that. He says that the consciousness of that person could be my mother or whatever, like you said, they're gone. They are so busy. They're busy being reborn. Because that
um,
if you first of all, it's your choice. You can believe in reincarnation. If you can make that work for yourself, wonderful. I tried. Or rebirth. The Buddhists seem to be pretty intelligent. And I've had a chance to meet a lot of them. I've been to Tibet a number of times and gone to all the sacred places and done all that kind of stuff. Climbed up all day long to reach a cave that even our guide had never been to, and he's Tibetan. My point is that that busyness you and I can agree on. We're seeing that, and that we are going to be very, very busy when we get into the Bardo and have no time whatsoever to lolly around or to talk to anyone. What Rinpoche said is what you're talking to. I don't know the correct word. You're talking to something that's like an apparition that definitely it's their self, still animate enough, but slowly decaying and gradually. That's the way they see it. I don't have another way of seeing it. myself. I'm I'm looking into but I trust them because I see how they behave, and I see how they uh, care for other people. Like he used to, the Rimsky used to come to our center, and we'd go to a local college, and the college guys would ask him really embarrassing questions, and I was be horrified that they would treat him that way. He never batted an eye. He would just talk to them. Uh, it was me that was having a conniption, right? Just don't. So I'm saying that I trust what they are and what they're doing and what they teach. Um, but I should add, and it's really important to add, is that the way things worked for me as far as developing any realization was not similar exactly to what I read in all the books. Each of us is so different. And but it's always coming down to what works for you. That's what's called in the Tibetan, your yidam is kind of what is going to work for you to become realized. And it's not going to, and what works for me is not going to be the same as what works for you. But what is the same is that it may not be like a book. It's going to be your book. It's going to be how can you become realized, more aware of these things we're talking about. I wish I knew more about my past lives or stuff like that, but I've never had any of these Rinpoches volunteer anything about my past lives for me or talk much about their own. They talk about that is done. They don't deny that at all. I'm saying I can't do it. One of my teachers says, um, don't, yeah, don't say you can't do it. Just say I can't do it. I'm saying I can't do that. I don't know whether you can or not. Uh, More power to you is what I say. Uh, but no, I'm pretty sincere about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you. Uh, in what you're sharing, and just now the reflection of, what works for you or what works for you, and how it leads us on a path, hopefully, to more of the letting go of attachments and more of the enlightenment, which also I've studied a lot about near-death experiences. It it feels aligned with what I've studied in the different stories and experiences that individuals have had that have died and come back to life. There are some similarities with like the life review and the bright light and unconditional love, things of that nature. But then there are a lot of other parts of near death experiences that seem to be very unique to the individual and what the individual went through in their life and their beliefs, and feels very tailored, and not in a disrespectful way, but just very unique to that individual and what they've been through. So it gives me more to think about with near death experiences as well.
yeah, I just think that each of us are different, and I'm just kind of blown away by the lack of seriousness. Something that if we really have lived innumerable lifetimes, I don't know it for a fact. Uh, or as my teacher said to us, he said to us as a group, this group that met every for 31 years, um, what he said was that we're the stragglers. We're the ones that never got it. In all the lifetimes we lived, we totally ignored it. We never realized it. We never got enlightened, um, and so we're just really, really good. It's what in our traditions called samsara, which is simply all of the uh, all of the stuff, all of the stuff that we have accumulated, all of this uh, recursion, all of this building up ourselves, thinking about ourselves, being selfish. The same thing I talked about with astrologers way back 500 years ago. Everything, they wanted everything to revolve around them. The fact is, it doesn't. Um, deal with it. And I'm trying to deal with it. But I'm saying it's not easy. I still go home to rest in all of my, uh, you know, all of the interests and ways of losing myself, watch a movie, read a book, stuff that really is accomplishing nothing more than getting rest from dealing with what is more difficult. It's difficult stuff as well. So I wish all of your readers the very best, and I'm doing my very, very best. That's the best I can do, right? More than that, I cannot do. So anyway, I think we're just about there.
Yeah, I've got one final question for you.
Cool.
In your own words, Michael, why do you think we were born?
Well, I think that I can only speak for myself. And that is, I think that we're born uh, to realize the nature of the mind itself. Uh, and a lot of what I've studied and a lot of what I do is trying to do just that. Is trying to uh, so, to let go enough to allow ourselves to experience uh, and realize how the mind actually works and what it is. So I don't. That's pretty much. I don't know that I thought of that as why I was born. But that's what I'm doing, and it's the only thing that interests me is dharma. I mean, psychology. I mean, astrology. I'm good at, and I've spent 65 years doing it. Uh, but that doesn't hold a candle uh, to dharma. I think I told you before that my teacher said astrology is one of the limbs of the yoga. It's not the root. Astrology can help improve this life, but it's like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. It's not a solution. Astrology can, and I've done it with many, many people. Astrology can improve our life, but it's talking about improving ourself and this life we're living, not about our future as 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 a rebirth. So I'm I'm talking at that kind of stuff. I'm trying to, but I love to talk. I'll talk astrology with anyone, and I know a lot about it. But Dharma, I'm not an expert on. I'm just sincerely learning it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't
Yeah,
know if that answers you as why was I born? I I know I could say to do a lot of stuff. I don't know.
to learn, yeah, is what I'm picking up as you're talking about it. I've often referred to this as an advanced classroom, and that there are lessons and learnings and wisdom around every single corner. Michael Erlewine, you've given us a lot to think about today, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of comments. And I would like to hear from everybody that is tuning in. What stood out to you today, or what do you think about the discussion? And I'd love to hear from everybody in the comments. And as a reminder, you can connect with Michael over on Facebook. He does a lot of posts, and the best way to reach him is through Facebook Messenger. If you are interested in helping Michael get that piece of equipment he referred to, he is doing a limited number of sessions for a limited time. And the best way is to reach him through Facebook Messenger. Last name is spelled Erlewine. I'll include the link in the description. And as a reminder, Michael has a bunch of free ebooks. It's amazing catalog. And so go over to spiritgrooves.net to pick that up. And for more information on my work as a psychic medium, go over to spiritandspark.com. Michael Erlewine, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your stories with us today. Much appreciated. I'm just very, very appreciative for your time, your talent, and for being here with us today. So thank you, Michael.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.